Hey everyone, Ryan here from Uinta Garage. In this episode, we're going over the install of DIY4X's roll cage kit with the additional family bars in Joey's blazer known as PB. We're going to be sharing our experience and best practices as amateur fabricators, and just want to remind you to use your best judgment when you're building your own cage.
On this episode of Uinta Garage, we're going to discuss the DIY4X complete K5 roll cage with the family bar and grab handle additions. Let me walk you through what we have in the kit. So these right here are the family bars. This is the B pillar with these brackets that bolt to the upper seat belt mount. Right here is your halo. And then these are the A pillars. Also included in the kit, you get these floor plates. These two longer floor plates belong under the A pillars up front. The other four go underneath the B pillar and the family bars. Now let's talk about the tools you're going to need to do this kit. You're going to need some drill bits. I personally like these step drill bits so you can drill the holes for these bolts. You're going to need an 1 3/4 hole saw so you can notch the family bars. You're going to need 9/16, 3 13/16, and a 3/4 inch socket, your favorite ratchet, 9/16 wrench, a grinder. You're also going to need a couple of ratchet straps to hold the halo to the roof. Don't forget, you're going to need your welding equipment. For this, we're using Eastwood MIG 135. Remember, all of these tools are relatively inexpensive, so any DIY guy can do it themselves and get these inexpensive tools and knock it out. For this build, we brought in our roll cage expert, Eric.
No dead nose. Now, the DIY4X kit is a basic kit. There are things that you have to add to it. When you're building a roll cage, there are a couple of things you need to think about. You need to think about how the force spreads out through the roll cage. That means every time you come to a joint, you need to back that joint up with another tube down into a floor base plate or something like that. That's what I mean when I say no dead nodes. If you have a tube backing up the other tube, it's not a dead node. If you have a tube that intersects just like this with nothing backing up right here, that force dead ends right there and goes out this way, instead of going out this way and then down into another tube.
Eric's right, but also understand that Plan B is a multi-purpose wheeling rig that also pulls duty as a grocery getter and go anywhere tactical soccer dad transportation vehicle. Every cage is a practice and compromise, whether it's keeping a heater vent or making sure you have room for your toddler in the back seat.
When you have this, you can see that this cage it looks a little minimal if you've looked at the internet. So on the halo bar right here, when we weld the halo bar together, we're going to do another bar, probably from that corner to that corner. You do whatever you need to do to have headroom. And then when you do your B pillar right here, then that attaches. We've got the family bars, and you're going to need a tube back there on the family bars. So this is as much as you need to get started, and you can build this entire cage without a bender. And that's what DIY4X wanted to do. They wanted you to have a cage kit that you did not need a bender. You're still going to need to be able to notch some tube, and you're still going to have some basic knowledge about cage building. Basic knowledge about cage building: triangles are strong. You need to have triangles. Squares, rectangles, those are weak shapes. Think about how the force is being spread out into the rest of the cage. No dead nodes. Said it before, you'll probably hear it a dozen times. And that's this basic cage. As we go through, we'll show you what we're going to do, and we'll explain why we're doing those things for the DIY4X cage.
Now let's talk about the prep that I had to do to get this truck ready for the roll cage. Obviously, I had to remove the windshield. We also had to remove the factory dash pad and just cut the dash out so the A-pillars will fit. Now where I cut was right where the factory speakers are. We just opened that a little bit more so we've got room for that A-pillar to sit wherever we want it. One thing I noticed is I don't think that this A-pillar is gonna be able to go in there with that lower vent without heavy modification. Chances are we're gonna end up taking out that lower vent, which is okay. We just cap the end of the tube and call it a day. All right, I wanna show you one important measurement you're gonna need to know. If you come about 5 inches up from this crease right here and 2 inches over, you wanna center a 2-inch hole. That 2-inch hole is where you're gonna drop the A-pillar down so you can make all your adjustments and measurements from there. One other really cool thing about the DIY 4x roll cage are these plates that they have. You can see he's got an anti-shear pin right here in the middle. That makes it so easy to line these up so when you go to put your bolts through, they all line up, and it keeps the plates from ever separating should you have a roll. So one other thing I want to point out is on these trucks, you've actually got a vent over here on the passenger side. This is a fresh air return. I've removed it for the sake of this video. Normally there's a vacuum controlled door here. We may have to switch to a manual door.
So we're putting in the B-pillar right here. The B-pillar is going right behind your hard top right here, the factory hard section that doesn't come off. And you want to test fit this before you cut it. We measured it out, and according to our measurements, we were going to have to cut 1/2 inch off of this. So what you do is you want to take a ratchet strap, and you want to ratchet strap this together. This is a pretty common practice in cages. And then we did this because Joey's building new bedsides for this, and so we need a clearance right here. Right here at this, we need about 1/2 inch of clearance because his new covers for this are about 1/2 inch. And so you can fit stuff without cutting stuff a lot of times by ratchet strapping it into the proper location and then just tack welding it. But we still have to cut this a little bit. You need to test fit everything before you start cutting. Everything gets test fitted, everything gets tack welded. Only until you have everything together do you fully weld. So this is a fantastic cage kit, the best on the market in the reality of all of it. But you still have to test fit. All the blazers are a little bit different. They're gonna be a little bit different. So because we have the different covers for the side that Joey's making, we're actually gonna take about 1/2 inch total off of the center tube of this. So we're taking 1/4 inch off of each side. You wanna take off of each side because you'll notice that you have that rosette weld right there. And so you just take a little bit off of each side.
You may have noticed earlier that Joey was welding with his sweet Miller welding goggles. Well, it wasn't until later in the day that he discovered his new presidential tan lines. Just a good reminder that when you're working in the garage, to always use the proper personal protection gear. Cover up out there.
So we're inside the cab doing the halo bar. We've got the B-pillar, the height set and everything. Now the cage kit comes with pre-notched halo bars. And you need to get those notches in a position. They're designed to go in a certain position to fit tightly so you don't have to re-notch those. What we did up here is you can see that we've got a ratchet strap here and a ratchet strap here. It's so much easier to hold it up with a couple of ratchet straps. We wanted the maximum amount of space possible, and so we're actually going to have to add some on the halo bar. We've got 2 gaps, but what we did is we just took the total of these 2 gaps. We're going to remove the halo bar. We're going to add the steel on the bench, then we'll grind it all flat and nice, so that we have the maximum amount of room possible in the halo bar while still fitting the notches. This does take a little bit of time. It is way important for you to take some time in these steps right here. Your cage will fit better overall. Even if you're looking at it and you think it's 1/8 of an inch out, if you can take 10 minutes and grind that 1/8 of an inch in, then the overall fit of the entire cage is going to be better. It's going to be tighter. You're going to have more clearance. So take some time, use ratchet straps for extra hands, take some time, and you'll have a much better fitting DIY 4x cage kit. Okay guys, so one of the more important things that happens when you're building a cage is seating position and where you're going to put your bars for your halo. This is, once again, the DIY 4x cage, but this is a basic kit. You need to put some triangulation in these. So the easiest way to do that is to put the driver, if the driver is around. Joey is the driver, this is PB. And so what we did is we just drew in marker above his head, giving him at least 2 or 3 inches of clearance around his head. And that is essentially going to be our no-go zone. You can't go there. And when we do our triangulation, whether we do it from the center point up over here, well, no, we aren't going to do that because that'll go right in the no-go zone. So that makes our triangulation come from the A pillar right there, the down bars, probably to right up over here, and then we'll do some more on the family cage. So get your seats in position. Get the guy who's driving the rig and whoever is his passenger, preferably if you can have the actual people in there, and draw some lines, and do not put any tube on that, because one thing that really sucks is when you build a cage and you spend all this time and all this money, and the first time you go wheeling, you hit your head. So when you do this properly, there's several different ways to do it. You can grind down. You can see right here we just have a little bit of rosette. This is where we put our sleeve in, right here. Now, using a grinder, you can do this really carefully. Using emery cloth, you can sand around it. We happen to have this kind of nice little tool that goes on the tube. You can get this from Amazon, that's where we got it. If you got 2 or 3 friends that are doing this cage, this is well worth it. Something that is a good thing to point out that I don't think I've ever seen pointed out on any other videos about this DIY 4x cage install is you can tell where the bends are. So if you look right here, I've got a blue mark right there and a blue mark right here. If you feel along the bend, you'll feel where the end of the bend has. That is where your tube is dead straight. Now the reason that you mark these is so you have something that is exactly the same on both sides to measure to. So if you're worried that your B pillar is slightly uneven, you have this line on this one, same line on the other one, and then you can measure from your floor plate up. Same thing up here. You can mark your bends right here, mark your bends right here, and you can measure so you can get your cage as symmetrical as possible. Sometimes symmetrical doesn't quite work in these blazers. That's why Kurt puts so much adjustability in these cages, is because not everything is always symmetrical. But having and knowing where the bends are gives you an exact place to measure from, so that if your truck does happen to be one of those rare ones that actually hasn't tweaked or twisted or creaked or cracked from the factory, then you can use those lines and you can get everything really symmetrical and really even. Remember, just because it's even measurement wise doesn't mean it looks right on the truck. If it's even measurement wise and it doesn't look right on the truck, just make it look right on the truck, because that's what you're looking at. Some of the cages that I've built over the years can be as much as a ½ an inch off side to side. Just depends on how hard the truck has been wheeled, how tweaked the frame is, or this, that, or the other.
With the B-bar and halo prepped, we moved on to the rear. We had to make sure that the seat and hard top still fit with the new bars.
So we're finishing up this part of the cage. We put the top on to check. Now I'm no master fabricator, but I do know that you have to check all of your clearances to get a correctly aligned cage. So it not only looks right when the top is off, but it looks right when the top is on too. We did find a couple of our tubes were slightly off, so we had to cut a little bit off and just just kind of work it a little bit until we got everything nice and even. A lot of people wonder how they're going to get this weld in here. I can't even stick my finger in here. So the key to this is your front plates that you have, you cut a hole underneath them, and then you simply just take the cage and you drop down the cage. And you can see right here that we've got more than enough room to get to a complete weld, 360 degrees all the way around here. It's easier to weld the grab handles on. And you can see that we dropped this cage with the entire cage tack welded together. So we have the whole basic DIY 4x kit cage tack welded together. There's some pretty good tacks. You drop the cage down, we'll weld these front bars in, and then we'll just go back through and start welding the whole cage together.
Alright, so we just finished up the basic DIY 4x cage kit. As you can see here, we've got the family bars up in place. We've got the B-pillar in place. And we've got the halo installed right here with the DIY 4x grab bars. We've got our 4 plates all bolted in and ready to go. And that is it for part 1 of our cage build series. On the second part of this cage series, we're going to show you how to take this basic kit and turn it into something that's just as strong as any custom kit you could buy today.
And go.
Yeah, your cheeks are just as red as mine.
The rest of you is tan. I can feel it. The rest of you is tan. You're burned.
Tell me when you're ready. Keep me going. Oh, you're going?
Begin!
Begin! Alright.
I've taken multiple takes.
Yeah, that's fine. Alright, guys. He threw a lot of volume.
Hello, my baby. Hello, my.